The waves gently rocked the small research boat as Rose checked her equipment one last time. The night was perfect for studying the glowing creatures in the water. No moon, calm seas, and clear skies filled with stars. She had done this work hundreds of times before, but something felt different tonight. Maybe it was the unusual silence, or perhaps it was how the sea creatures were acting strange, hiding deeper than normal. Rose leaned over the boat's edge, holding her light meter just above the dark water. The digital numbers showed almost no activity, which was odd for this time of year. She frowned and checked her watch. 11:47 p.m. The bioluminescent organisms should have been very active by now. A flash of blue light from above caught her attention. At first, she thought it was lightning, but the sky was clear. She looked up and froze. 3 bright lights moved in a triangle pattern, far too low to be airplanes and too quiet to be helicopters. They stopped directly above her boat. Rose grabbed her phone to record the lights, but it wouldn't turn on. Her other equipment was dead too. The depth finder, radio, even her backup battery pack. The only light came from those strange objects above and the gentle green glow of her watch numbers. The air grew heavy, making it hard to breathe. A low hum started, so deep she felt it in her chest more than heard it. The boat's metal parts vibrated, creating an eerie singing sound. Rose tried to start the engine, but like everything else, it was dead. Her hand shook as she grabbed the emergency flares, but before she could light one, everything changed. The darkness above her opened up, not like clouds parting, more like reality itself split apart, showing a massive shape hidden behind the night sky. A beam of pale green light shot down, surrounding her boat. Rose felt her feet leave the deck. Fear grabbed her throat as she realized she was floating. She tried to swim in the air, to grab onto something, but the light had her completely stuck. The world started to fade away. She saw her little boat getting smaller below her, the gentle waves making it look like a toy in a bathtub. The last thing she remembered was thinking how peaceful it looked, drifting there on the dark water, with small glowing creatures finally starting to dance around it. She woke up to cold. Not the natural cold of a winter morning, but something artificial and dead. The air smelled wrong, too clean, like a hospital, but worse. Rose kept her eyes closed, trying to understand what she could without looking. She was lying on something hard and smooth. The humming she'd heard earlier was still there, but different now, coming from all around her. There were other sounds too, soft beeping, something that might have been voices but didn't sound quite human, and a strange clicking that reminded her of dolphins communicating underwater. When she finally opened her eyes, the brightness hurt. Everything was white. The ceiling, the walls, even the strange bed she was lying on. She tried to move her head but couldn't. She tried to lift her arms, her legs, even just a finger, but nothing worked. Only her eyes could move, darting around in growing panic. A shadow fell across her face. Something bent over her, something that looked almost human but wasn't. It had huge black eyes that didn't blink, gray skin that seemed to shift color slightly as it moved, and long fingers that ended in too many joints. It held something that might have been a tool or might have been alive. Rose couldn't tell the difference. The creature made a sound that hurt her ears, and others like it appeared. They moved around her with horrible efficiency, checking things she couldn't see, touching her with their cold fingers. One of them held up a screen covered in symbols that moved and changed like living things. Rose tried to scream, but no sound came out. She tried to fight, but her body still wouldn't respond. Tears ran down her face as she realized the truth. All those stories about alien abductions, all those people who claimed they'd been taken and tested, they weren't crazy. They weren't lying. And now she was living the same nightmare. The creatures seemed especially interested in her tears. One of them collected the drops with a tiny silver device, while another pointed a pulsing blue light at her head. Rose felt a strange tingling in her mind, like someone was gently touching her thoughts. The last thing she saw before everything went dark again was one of the creatures making a gesture that almost looked like it was waving goodbye. Time had lost all meaning in the White Room. Rose couldn't tell if she had been there for days or weeks. The creatures, she called them grays in her mind, came and went in patterns she couldn't understand. Sometimes they brought strange devices that hummed and glowed. Other times they just watched her, their huge black eyes never blinking. They had stopped keeping her completely paralyzed, but the metal bands around her wrists and ankles made sure she couldn't leave the bed. Rose discovered that if she stayed calm and didn't fight, they gave her more freedom to move her head and arms. She used this small mercy to learn what she could about her prison. The room changed sometimes. Walls would become transparent, showing her other cells with different creatures inside them. Some looked almost human, while others were so strange she couldn't even guess what they were. One had skin like flowing water. Another seemed to be made of crystals that sang softly. They were all test subjects, just like her. Rose noticed something odd about herself too. She had always been good at reading people's emotions, but here, in this place, that ability was getting stronger. When the grays came near, she could feel things from them. Not emotions exactly, but patterns of thought. Cold, ordered patterns that felt like equations written in ice. One day, something new happened. The grays brought in another prisoner, a creature that looked like a cross between a cat and a butterfly. Its wings were torn, and it was crying. Without thinking, Rose reached out with her mind, trying to comfort it. To her surprise, she felt the creature respond. Its fear eased a little, and it sent her a feeling of grateful warmth. The grays got very excited about this. Their thoughts became sharp and eager, like hungry sharks circling. They brought in more devices, pointing them at Rose's head while she continued to mentally connect with the butterfly cat creature. She felt them trying to measure something, to capture whatever was happening between her and the other prisoner. That's when Rose understood what they wanted. They weren't just studying different species. They were studying connections, emotions, the invisible threads that linked living things together. And somehow, she was better at making these connections than their other test subjects. The tests got more intense after that. They brought in different creatures, some friendly, some scary, and made Rose try to connect with all of them. Sometimes it worked beautifully, creating bridges of feeling and understanding between species that had never met before. Other times it went horribly wrong, leaving both Rose and the other creature shaking with mental pain. Through it all, Rose kept her secret. She let the grays think they were controlling everything, but each connection she made taught her more. She learned that the butterfly cat was from a world of endless forests floating in the sky. She learned that the crystal creature sang stories that could be heard across space. Most importantly, she learned that the grays' own technology was partly alive. Bio-machines that could feel and think in their own simple way. The grays didn't notice that while they were studying her, she was studying their equipment. Every time they used their devices on her, she felt out a little more about how they worked. The living metal responded to her mind, just like the other creatures did, but very quietly, very secretly. Late in what Rose thought might be night, the lights never really went down, but the grays came less often. She lay on her bed and practiced. Tiny whispers to the bands around her wrists, gentle questions to the walls, soft songs to the machines that monitored her. She couldn't control them yet, but she could feel them starting to listen. She also felt something else, something the grays didn't know about. Somewhere in the facility, there was a mind that felt different from all the others. It felt human. Not just human-like, but actually human, thinking human thoughts and feeling human emotions. Rose didn't reach out to it directly. She had learned to be careful, but she kept track of it, like a sailor keeping track of a distant lighthouse. The grays thought they were the only ones learning from their experiments. They thought their test subject was helpless, just another specimen to be studied and used. They didn't realize that every test made her stronger, every connection taught her more, and every day brought her closer to understanding their weaknesses. Rose kept her face blank and her thoughts quiet. But deep inside, a plan was starting to form. Tom pushed his cleaning cart down the bright hallway, keeping his head down like a good worker should. The Greys barely noticed him anymore. He was just another piece of maintenance equipment to them, no more important than the living machines that kept their facility running. That was exactly how he wanted it. His real job had nothing to do with cleaning. Every day, he collected information about the facility and its experiments. The mop in his hands had tiny sensors that mapped the building's layout. The cleaning fluid he used contained microscopic devices that analyzed everything they touched. Even his plain work uniform was special, recording every sound and movement around him. Today, he had a new section to clean, the high-security testing area. He'd been working towards this for months, slowly earning the trust needed to get access to this level. The Greys were careful, but they were also arrogant. They never imagined that a simple maintenance worker could be a threat. As he worked, he noticed something odd about one of the cell doors. The living metal of the lock seemed disturbed, almost nervous. Tom had learned to read the facility's biotechnology over his months undercover. The machines were alive in their own way, and right now, this one was acting strange. He glanced through the small window in the door and saw a human woman. She was strapped to a bed, but she didn't look afraid. Instead, she seemed to be concentrating on something. The lock under Tom's hand twitched again, and he realized what was happening. She was somehow communicating with the facility systems. Tom checked his wrist display, disguised as a simple cleaning schedule. The woman was listed as Subject 247, captured from Earth's Pacific Ocean region. But there was something else, something that made his pulse quicken. The Greys had marked her as showing unusually high empathic abilities. He kept cleaning, moving slowly past her door, but his mind was racing. His mission had just gotten much more complicated. He wasn't supposed to contact any other humans in the facility that would risk exposing Earth's secret knowledge of alien life. But this woman, this Subject 247, she was doing something he'd never seen before. The next day, Tom made sure to clean her section again. He watched through the window as the Greys conducted their tests. They brought in different alien creatures, and the woman seemed to communicate with each one. But what really caught his attention was how the testing machines responded to her. They moved differently when she was connected to them, almost like they were eager to help her. Tom had been sending regular reports back to Earth through a hidden quantum transmitter in his cart. That night, he sent an urgent message. Found possible asset. Subject shows unprecedented control over biotech systems, requesting permission to make contact. The response came quickly. Permission granted. Proceed with extreme caution. Asset could be vital to Operation Shutdown. Now he had to figure out how to approach her without alerting the Greys. He studied her schedule, noting when the tests happened and when she was left alone. He also watched how she interacted with the facility systems. She was subtle about it, but he could tell she was getting stronger, learning more every day. One night, when the facility was as quiet as it ever got, Tom did something dangerous. While cleaning near her cell, he reached out and touched the door's control panel. Quick as a flash, he sent a coded message through the living metal. 3 pulses, the old Earth pattern for SOS. He felt the system respond, carrying his message to her. Inside the cell, the woman went very still. Then, slowly, she turned her head toward the door. Their eyes met through the small window. Tom gave a tiny nod, barely more than a twitch. She blinked once, deliberately, then looked away, her face carefully blank. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Tom continued his rounds, his mop moving steadily across the floor, but his mind was already working on the next step. He had found someone who could turn the Greys' own technology against them. Now he just had to keep them both alive long enough to use that advantage. His cleaning cart hummed softly as he pushed it down the hall, its hidden transmitter already preparing to send another message back to Earth. Things were about to get interesting. Rose waited 3 days before she dared to reach out to the human mind she'd felt. The cleaner came to her section every day, always at the same time, always with the same careful movements. But now she knew he was watching her, and she was watching him too. When she finally made contact, she did it through the cleaning machine he pushed. It was easier than trying to speak directly to his mind, and safer too. The Greys wouldn't notice one of their machines talking to another. She sent a simple message through the living metal. "Who are you?" The response came back through the handle of his mop. "A friend. Call me Tom. We need to be careful." Over the next few weeks, they developed their own way of talking. Every time Tom cleaned near her cell, they exchanged information through the facilities machines. Rose learned that humans had known about aliens for years. Earth had spies in many places across the galaxy, quietly gathering information while pretending to be a primitive species. Tom learned about the Greys' experiments. Rose told him how they were trying to understand and control emotions, turning feelings into weapons. She explained about the other test subjects, the different species being held against their will, and the ways the Greys were breaking galactic laws. Why haven't they been stopped? She asked one day through a medical monitor. Politics. Tom's answer came back through a light panel. They're protected by powerful friends. The Galactic Council can't touch them without proof. Rose thought about this while the Greys ran their daily tests. They were getting more excited about her progress, making her connect with more dangerous creatures, pushing her abilities further. They didn't realize that every test made it easier for her to control their machines. One day, something went wrong during a test. The Greys brought in a creature that was all sharp edges and anger. When Rose tried to connect with it, pain shot through her head. The creature started thrashing in its restraints, its spiky body cutting into the bed. Before the Greys could react, Tom was there. He'd been cleaning nearby and rushed in, pretending to help restrain the creature. In the chaos, his hand touched Rose's arm. The real contact, skin to skin, was like an electric shock after weeks of talking through machines. In that moment, their minds connected directly. Rose felt his concern, his careful plans, his years of training. Tom felt her strength, her growing powers, her determination to help the other prisoners. They both pulled back quickly, before the Greys could notice, but something had changed. Later that night, Tom sent a longer message through her room's air filter. "The Greys are breaking more laws than we thought. They're planning to use these experiments to attack peaceful worlds. Earth is on their list of targets." Rose wasn't surprised. She'd felt the Greys' cold excitement growing, their cruel plans taking shape. But now she had a new way to fight back. When she connected with the facilities machines, she could feel Tom's presence in them too, guiding her, showing her which systems were important. Together, they mapped the facility through its own nervous system of living metal and pulsing energy. Tom taught her about weak points in the security, places where the machines could be turned against their masters. Rose showed him how to speak to the other test subjects through the medical equipment, building a network of allies. The Greys noticed nothing. They were too excited about their success with Subject 247, too busy planning their attacks. They never saw how their own machines were slowly turning away from them, listening more to Rose's gentle requests than their harsh commands. But Rose and Tom had to be careful. One wrong move would ruin everything. They took their time, gathering allies, building trust, preparing for the right moment. Through it all, their strange connection grew stronger. Sometimes Rose could feel Tom's presence even when he wasn't nearby, a steady warmth in the cold facility. The Greys thought they were learning how to control emotions and connections. They didn't realize they were teaching their prisoners exactly what they needed to know to fight back. Rose lay in her bed each night, feeling the facility's machines humming around her like friends, and smiled. The Greys had no idea what was coming. The crystal being sang its sad song again that night, but this time Rose understood the words. Through the facility's machines, she had learned to translate its music language. The creature was singing about its home world, about stars that danced and mountains that grew like flowers. More importantly, it was singing about freedom. Rose had spent weeks building a web of communication between all the test subjects. The butterfly cat now acted as a messenger, sending emotions and pictures to others when the Greys weren't watching. The water-skinned creature could slip messages through the facility's liquid waste system. Even the angry spike creature had joined their secret network, its rage now focused on a real target. Tom brought news every day through his cleaning rounds. Earth's ships are in position, he told her through a medical scanner. They're hiding in the dust clouds around this sector. We just need to disable the facility's shields when the time comes. The Greys were getting ready for something big. Rose could feel their excitement growing sharper, colder. They brought in new machines, bigger ones that hummed with dangerous power. They started moving test subjects to a new section of the facility, one that Rose hadn't mapped yet. One of the Greys made a mistake during a routine test. It forgot to reset a brain scanner, and Rose caught a glimpse of their full plan. The Greys had found a way to turn emotions into energy. Fear, anger, love, all of it could be collected and stored. They were building weapons that could feed on feelings, growing stronger with every scrap of emotion they absorbed. That night, Rose sent an urgent message through the facility systems to every test subject. They're going to drain us. Turn us into batteries for their weapons. We have to move now. The response came back in waves. Determination from the crystal singer, fierce agreement from the spike creature, steady support from the water being. Through it all, she felt Tom's presence in the machines, calm and ready. Rose had practiced this next part for weeks. She reached out to every piece of living technology in her section, whispering to them, promising them freedom from the Greys' control. The machines had grown to trust her, to prefer her gentle requests over the Greys' harsh commands. She started with the door controls, convincing them to misread their security codes. Then she moved to the medical systems, making them report that all test subjects were sleeping peacefully. Finally, she touched the huge power cores that fed the facility, singing to them softly, asking them to get ready for change. The spike creature moved first. It broke free from its cell, creating exactly the kind of chaos they needed. The Greys rushed to contain it, not noticing that other cell doors were quietly opening. The butterfly cat flew through the halls, leading others to safety. The water beings slipped through the pipes, shorting out security systems. Tom appeared at Rose's door with a real key card this time. No need to convince the lock to open. Earth's forces are ready, he said as he helped her up. We have 30 minutes to get the shields down. They ran through the halls together, Rose talking to the machines while Tom guided them toward the control center. The crystal being's battle song echoed through the facility, giving courage to the escaping prisoners. The Greys were running too, but in the wrong directions, confused by their own security systems that now obeyed Rose instead of them. More cell doors opened with each step they took. Creatures of all shapes and sizes joined their rush through the facility. Some flew, some crawled, some moved in ways that human eyes could barely follow. But they all moved with purpose, with hope. Rose felt the weapons storage area up ahead. The Greys' emotion-powered devices were there, waiting to be used. But she could feel something else too. The machines themselves didn't want to hurt anyone. They were alive in their own way, and they were tired of being used to cause pain. Almost there, Tom said, checking his disguised communicator. Earth's ships are moving into position. Rose reached out to the nearest wall panel, feeling the living metal warm under her hand. All through the facility, machines waited for her signal. The Greys thought they had built the perfect prison, but they had really built their own trap. Rose took a deep breath and prepared to prove just how wrong they had been about humanity's power. The control room doors slid open at Rose's touch, the living metal eager to help. Inside, 3 Greys turned to stare at them with their huge black eyes. For a moment, nobody moved. Then everything happened at once. The Greys reached for their weapons, but the guns wouldn't respond. Rose had already convinced the weapons biocircuits to shut down. Tom moved fast, throwing small devices that released clouds of gray smoke. The smoke wasn't meant to hurt. It just confused the Greys' special vision. The shield controls are behind that wall, Tom said. running to a large panel. He wasn't pretending to be a simple cleaner anymore. His movements were quick and sure, like a trained soldier. "Can you talk to them?" Rose placed her hands on the wall. The shield generator was huge, a living machine bigger than a house. It felt old and tired, worn out from years of holding up the powerful energy barrier around the facility. Rose sang to it softly, the same way she'd learned to sing from the crystal being. Alarms started screaming through the facility. The Greys had triggered emergency backups, trying to regain control of their systems. Rose felt their cold minds pushing against hers, trying to force the machines to obey them again. But she wasn't alone anymore. The butterfly cat appeared at the door, its torn wings now healed. Behind it came the spike creature, the water being, and dozens of other test subjects. They formed a circle around Rose, and she felt their strength flowing into her. Every emotion the Greys had tried to study and control was now turning against them. "Earth ships are in position," Tom said, watching his communicator. "Shield needs to go down in the next 5 minutes or we lose our window." Rose pushed harder, combining her power with the feelings from the other creatures. The shield generator responded, its energy field starting to flicker. Through the facility systems, she could feel the Greys panicking. They were sending emergency signals, calling for help. "More Greys coming," the butterfly cat warned in its emotion language. "Many more." "Keep them busy," Tom ordered, and the freed prisoners moved into action. The spike creature blocked one door with its body. The water being flowed into the air vents, making them unusable. The crystal singer began its highest battle song, the sound making the Greys clutch their heads in pain. Rose focused everything on the shield generator. "You can rest soon," she promised it. "Just help us one last time." She felt the ancient machine respond, gathering its strength for one final effort. The facility shook as something exploded several floors below. Through the living metal, Rose felt unfamiliar minds approaching, the reinforcements the Greys had called. But she also felt something else, something that made her smile even as sweat ran down her face from the effort of controlling the shields. "Tom," she said, "your friends are coming too, aren't they?" He grinned. Earth wasn't the only one watching the Greys. "We've made some interesting allies out here." The shield generator gave a final groan and shut down. Through the control room's windows, Rose saw the space around the facility shimmer as the energy barrier disappeared. Then the darkness lit up with dozens of ships appearing from nowhere. Some were Earth vessels, hidden until now by special technology. Others were alien ships, their designs strange and beautiful. "The Greys broke too many laws," Tom explained as he helped Rose stand. The effort of controlling the shields had left her shaking. Earth's been gathering proof and making friends with others they've hurt. Everyone was just waiting for a chance to shut them down. The facility rocked again as the ships outside began targeting specific sections: weapons storage, power plants, everything except the areas with living creatures. Rose felt the Greys' minds fill with an unfamiliar emotion. Fear. They had never imagined their test subjects could fight back. They had never guessed that humans were so much more than they appeared. "We need to move," Tom said. "Our ride's going to be here soon." He helped Rose toward the door where their group of freed prisoners waited, ready to show the galaxy what humanity can really do. Rose looked at the strange but wonderful creatures around her, her friends now, not just fellow test subjects. She felt the living machines of the facility responding to her touch, eager to help her one last time. The Greys had wanted to study emotions, to turn feelings into weapons. Instead, they had helped create something much more powerful: hope. 3 months after the breakout, Rose stood before the Galactic Council. The Great Hall stretched up so high she couldn't see the ceiling, and beings from 1,000 worlds filled the circular chambers. Some looked almost human, others were as strange as light given form. All of them were watching her. She wore a simple blue uniform now, marked with Earth's new symbol, a spiral galaxy with a small blue dot at its edge. Tom stood beside her, also in uniform. They had spent weeks preparing for this moment, gathering evidence, collecting testimonies from the freed prisoners, and documenting every illegal experiment the Greys had conducted. "The facility's records are clear," Rose said, her voice carried by machines that felt friendly, almost eager to help her speak to the massive crowd. "The Greys violated 37 major laws and 62 minor regulations. They performed experiments without consent, developed illegal weapons, and planned attacks on peaceful worlds." The Greys' representatives sat in their high chairs, their silvery skin shifting with anger. "Humans were not meant to be here," one of them said. "Your species is too primitive to participate in galactic affairs. You cannot understand." "We understand perfectly," Tom interrupted. He activated a hologram in the center of the chamber. It showed Earth's ships appearing during the breakout, their technology far more advanced than the Greys had believed possible. "Humanity has been watching, learning, and preparing for over 50 years. We chose to appear primitive. It was safer that way." Murmurs filled the chamber. Rose felt the surprise and interest from the assembled beings. Many of them had underestimated humans too, seeing Earth as a backwater world barely worth noticing. Now they were beginning to understand how wrong they had been. The butterfly cat fluttered down to land beside Rose. Its wings were fully healed now, shimmering with colors that human eyes had never seen before. "Tell them about the machines," it suggested in its emotion language, which Rose still understood perfectly. Rose touched the speaking device gently. The living metal warmed under her fingers, happy to amplify her voice. "The Greys didn't just hurt living beings," she said. "They enslaved their own technology. The facility's machines were alive in their own way, forced to cause pain against their nature. That abuse has to stop too." More murmurs, but this time Rose felt interest and hope mixed with the surprise. Many worlds used living technology, but few had considered its rights or feelings. The crystal being, now a representative of its own world, sang a note of agreement that made the chamber's windows vibrate. "Earth offers its help," Tom added, "to rehabilitate the facility's machines and to help prevent such abuses in the future. We've developed ways to communicate with living technology, to work with it rather than enslaving it." The council's leader, a being made of shifting silver fog, moved forward. "You ask for much," it said in a voice like wind through trees. "Full membership in the Galactic Council, recognition of machine rights, sanctions against the Greys. Why should we grant these requests?" Rose smiled. This was the moment she had been preparing for. She reached out with her mind, touching the council chamber's own living systems. She felt them respond, eager to connect with someone who understood them. All around the chamber, lights brightened and dimmed in beautiful patterns. The air circulation created soft music. Even the chairs adjusted themselves to make their occupants more comfortable. "Because we understand something the Greys never did," Rose said. "Real power doesn't come from control or fear. It comes from connection, from working together. Humans aren't powerful because we can build advanced ships or spy on other worlds. We're powerful because we can bring people together, even across the gaps between species." The fog being was silent for a long moment. Then it moved in a way that Rose felt meant approval. "Earth has proven itself," it announced, "not through force, but through wisdom and compassion. We accept your evidence against the Greys. We grant your requests. Welcome, humanity, to the greater galaxy." Rose felt tears in her eyes, but they were happy tears this time. She thought about her little research boat, still drifting somewhere in Earth's oceans. She had gone out that night looking for glowing creatures in the sea. Instead, she had found something much bigger, a way to help both her own people and countless others reach for the stars. Tom touched her hand gently. Through their connection, she felt his pride and joy matching her own. The Greys had tried to turn emotions into weapons. Instead, they had helped prove that feelings, understanding, and cooperation were the most powerful forces in the universe, and humanity was ready to share these gifts with all who wanted to learn.